right, we are here in episode number 2 of our How to Write a Startup Business Plan for an SBA Loan series. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to write a killer executive summary. My name is Kyle. I lead our custom business plan writing services here at Projection Hub. I reviewed thousands of business plans as a former SBA loan officer, getting millions of dollars worth of those approved. And in my capacity here with Projection Hub, I have written hundreds of business plans, which have also been approved for millions of dollars in financing. So that's where my experience is coming from. If you missed episode number 1, you might want to go watch that. Not a requirement. We'll link that down below. And basically that was just an overview of the startup business plan in general. So what are the key questions we need to answer? What are some common misconceptions and some recommendations, and just really setting the stage for the rest of this mini series. So as I mentioned in today's video, we're going to be talking a little bit more in detail about how to write the executive summary, which I think is maybe tied for first of the most important portion of your business plan. And we're going to get into why I think that today. Unlike the first video where it was a lot more of talking and giving a little bit more of a conceptual overview of things, today I'm going to be doing a little bit more show and tell. So I'm going to be showing a real example of a business plan that we've written recently here at Projection Hub and kind of walking through the executive summary, what it should include, and then giving you some tips and tricks that you should think about as you're writing your executive summary. So as always, give the channel a subscription, like the video if you appreciated it, and consider watching the next video in the series. You can go back and watch the first one if you'd like to. I would say first one was more of an overview. This video and on out are going to be more focused on specific sections, so you can kind of step through it there. I'm excited to get into this one for you here. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, we've shifted into floating head mode, which means we are going to show off some examples and some demonstrations. Now, what I have up here is an actual business plan that we've wrapped up recently for a client that is starting a laundromat. I've anonymized the data, and that's why you see these random squares on the cover page, just because I don't want you to know their real name and where they're doing this and all of those details, but largely the exact same. We're going to get into this, and remember, we're just going to focus on the executive summary in this video. So this is a whole business plan that we could get into, but we're going to focus on the executive summary, and we'll get into the additional sections and the subsequent videos. So one of the very first tips that I'm going to recommend, so I'm assuming if you're at this stage in the video or in the series, you probably haven't written your business plan yet, and you're kind of trying to maybe hopefully following along and writing your business plan in stages as we go, which I would highly recommend. But one tip I really like to give is to write your executive summary first. I think some people throw it in as a last second thing at the end, or maybe they're not quite sure where to approach it. But I think writing an executive summary first is one of the most pressure releasing approaches to writing a business plan. You're focusing more about like, I'm going to write just like a quick 1-pager, 2-pager about my business plan. And then the rest of the business plan is essentially just expanding on each of those sections as you go throughout the business plan. Yeah, there's going to be some additional things you add in, but for being completely honest, the portions you're going to include in your executive summary are the most important things in the business plan, and you're just doing a little highlight. The next tip I like to provide is the executive summary is going to be the first thing that you work on, and it should also be the last thing that you work on. So we're going to write our executive summary before you've done the whole business plan. You're going to give it what you know, your best guess as you're kind of fleshing that out. And then when we move in and do the deeper dive on each of the sections subsequently, you're going to learn more things. You might change your idea on how you're going to do something. You might change your game plan for a specific thing, or the numbers might change by the time you get to the end of your business plan. So when you feel like you've gone through all the steps necessary, then you'll come back up to your executive summary and you can make tweaks, or you can add additional details into those sections. So the executive summary first will help us vet our idea. It'll help you think about things at a higher level. And then as we move forward into the business plan, it will draw you into more detail in those sections. All right, so first in our executive summary, the main thing I want to talk about is when I'm writing a business plan, I try to follow like 5 kind of subsections in my executive summary. Now, depending upon the industry, depending upon the situation, yeah, things can change, and that's okay, or how much experience they have in one area or detail they have in one area. But in general, this structure I like to follow is the basic intro or overview. So you can call this like a company description, or like you're laying out the scenario here. So I like to have this as the quick background as to what's going on. This one is written in a little bit more like, from as long as I can remember, this is what I was doing, but it can be more matter of fact than that, especially if you need more space to explain the concept. But that should be the introduction, is a few paragraphs about what the business is going to be doing. Next, straight into about the owner, experience and qualifications. So this is a little counterintuitive, or I guess counter to what would be typical, I think, in recommendations for the industry. But the reality is, especially for a startup SBA loan, a very big portion of the decision they're making making about an SBA loan is about you, is about the ownership, is about your ability to do this successfully. So we're going to include that front and center in your executive summary. You'll have the chance to go into greater detail later in the operations section, but we want to talk about that here. So just going to talk about yourself. Talk about your industry relevant experience is the most important thing. So in this example, starting a laundromat, right? So do you have any familiarity with the laundromat industry? Have you worked in it before? Have you managed one? Have you owned one? Any sort of relevant experience you can talk about, we're going to include that. If you don't have industry specific experience, then we're going to zoom out a little bit and say, okay, what other experience do you have? Do you have professional management experience? Do you have entrepreneurial experience? Have you started a business before? Have you done sales before? Have you owned a brick and mortar location or managed one before? So there's a lot of different experiences you can draw from, and that's what you're going to talk about. So this is like the Cliff Notes version of that. Talk about yourself, what your background is, what your experience is. And another thing that I'll try not to go on too much of a tangent right here is if you lack compelling experience or compelling relevant experience, whether that's professional skill set or direct industry experience, try to supplement that. Maybe add a partner to the business that does have relevant experience, right? So maybe in this case, if I had no laundromat experience before, but maybe I had a little bit of retail management experience before, and I found a buddy who has done the laundromat game before and made that my partner, that makes your business plan a lot stronger. In other industries, so laundromat's going to be a little bit more of a passive income type situation, but in other ones that require a little bit more like personnel management, hiring a key manager or getting one to agree, on an employment contract or something like that. Basically, you're locking in that experience that you don't have. So that's what we're going to talk about here. But again, first pass at this, just talk about your experience. If you have partners, great, add them in, talk about what you know. Third, we're kind of outlining the opportunity. Now, this is a section that you'll be coming back to and adding more detail. So just go off of what you know here and your gut reaction so far. So in this example, we talk about understanding the shortage of laundromats in the area. The ones that are there are really run down. And so we talk about that's the opportunity in this specific area was there's a high renting population, which is usually indicative of higher demand for laundromats. And there are laundromats, but a couple of them are really poorly managed, bad Google reviews. They're really run down. So that's the opportunity, right? So the opportunity is unique because it can be a few different things. It can be a problem/solution. It can be a market opportunity like this. It could be as I explained in episode 1, it could be a one-off opportunity. So something unique, like maybe a huge business is choosing their headquarters in the city that you're in, and they're 30 minutes away from the closest coffee shop. So you're going to open up a coffee shop right across the street to take advantage of the customer base from there or something like that, right? That's going to be your one-off unique opportunity or a contract opportunity or something like that. So this can be a few different things, but that's what that's going to be. Next, we're going to talk about business objectives. So the question I like to ask our clients is, what does success look like to you in years 1, 3, and 5? So if they have their numbers and stuff like that, that might be the basis of the answer. Maybe they don't know that yet. So maybe their realistic goal is we want to try to break even in year 1, and that's their goal. Year 3, success would look like expanding the business in some way. Year 5 might look like selling the business or a second location or something like that. So just sit there and think about, like, for what you know about what you want to do in the industry you want to get into, what does success look like if you just had to guess right now? And then again, we'll come back, as you figure out the projections, as you figure out different things like that, the scale of the opportunity, you can come back and revise that. But just to keep in mind, the executive summary is setting the scope for the lender, for the person reading, right? We don't want them to have to wait and wade through all this information to start to figure out, like, oh, so that's how big this is going to be, or oh, that's how this person knows what they're doing. We want to give them that quick entry so that they know the rest of the details that they read is just gravy, right? So we want to provide the scope of their expectations. Next is going to be a quick financial overview. So you might talk about how much funding or financing you're planning to get, or how much is the total project cost? How much of that are you putting in personally? How much are you securing in an investment? How much are you seeking in a loan? How do you plan to use that loan? Depending upon the industry. So like a laundromat has a relatively, I don't want to say standardized, but like how much you stand to earn in a laundromat, it's pretty well known, I think, by a lender. It's not a super unknown. So if your concept is a little bit more unique, you might talk about like your projected revenue for the first year. That could be some things that could be added in, but in general, that's a detail. So that's a quick overview of the executive summary. Now in this case, we've got a big image here. We've got a table of contents. But if we put this just on, we're looking at like 2 pages of information here. That is the structure I would follow. The brief kind of company overview, the owner background and experience, your objectives in year 1, 3, 5, setting the scene for the opportunity. What is the opportunity in front of you? And financial highlights. Oh, one thing I didn't mention about the opportunities, that could also be like a competitive advantage. So if there's something unique that you have that nobody else is doing, that's an opportunity as well. So those are the sections we want to get answered in our executive summary. And my encouragement to you is to do this first. Sit down, fill this out the best you can right now. Then we're going to dive into the sections one at a time. Company description, section. Oh, now we're getting into what it looks like, where it's going to be located, what are the images going to look like, right? But that's just a deeper dive on point number 1 of our executive summary. Then when we get to the end of that section or the end of that business plan, we come back up, we tidy up, we get more detailed, we tighten up the executive summary. So that's the recommendation. Executive summary is first. It's also last. Some things to keep in mind. This is probably the most likely portion of your business plan to get read. A lender, speaking from personal experience, is not going to read every word of your business plan. But if you really make your executive summary good, you can probably count on the fact that they're going to read your executive summary. Also, your executive summary, if it's just really tight and great, this is like your elevator pitch right here, right? If you are strong belief in your executive summary, even if you get too long-winded later in the business plan, you can rely on the fact that your executive summary is kind of your anchor. It's what you can come back to. The last tip to keep in mind is the series that we're talking about right here is pretty specific about if you're trying to do a startup and try to seek SBA financing. And so you want your executive summary and you want your business plan to be written for its intended audience. You want to try to avoid making it like universally applicable, which a lot of this stuff you wouldn't have to change a whole lot. But when you get into your financial overview, you probably would make some tweaks there depending upon who you think is going to read it. Even if that was like a specific lender and you put in here, like we would love a $500,000 loan from Chase Bank or whatever, that would be a way to tweak that. There you have it. That is how to write a killer executive summary. This is coming from the experience of I have read thousands of business plans that have bad executive summaries, and then I have to go fishing through a business plan, figure out the most basic details, and then it's very hard to remember them sometimes. And every time we produce a business plan, and this is the structure we follow, is very positively received by lenders, by business owners, and it's just really effective to have this nice little strong lead into that application process when you're talking about it. So there you have it. A couple things I want to mention. 1, subscribe to the channel. 2, like the video if you appreciated it. Video number 3, we're going to be doing a deeper dive on the owner's background and relevant experience and how you can kind of showcase your expertise and shore that up a little bit to make it even better, and basically preparing the personal side of things as you're going into the SBA loan process. One kind of quick resource I want to make available to you guys. I mentioned at the end of the last video that I'll be plugging, we offer a few different free reviews. So at this point, I'm assuming watching this video, maybe you have an executive summary. You should go and fill out this free startup feasibility review. You're just going to answer some questions. You're essentially going to answer executive summary questions. If you've already written your executive summary, you can attach it here. I'll read it. I'll take a look at it. I'll give you some feedback. If you plan on getting an SBA loan, you can click yes or maybe, and there's some additional SBA questions so that we can help you out. Take advantage of that. Get some real, free, useful feedback. Go ahead and watch the next video, episode 3 in our How to Write a Startup Business Plan for an SBA Loan, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.